All right. Hello and welcome to the fourth in our 5 series of master classes on core values. I am so excited to be talking to you about this topic. It is absolutely my favorite. We will not be using a PowerPoint today. We will be doing stories and really workshopping it out together. This is probably going to take you a little bit more time than within just this hour, but it is absolutely a really meaningful exercise to do. And chances are you've probably done a core values exercise in the past, but it's always good to revisit them in preparing for this presentation. Just like yesterday in preparing for this presentation, I had a little aha about my core values myself. And I think every time we come back to our core values and reassess where we are and where we want to be, and then start taking steps to come into align that. It's like we're clarifying, we're getting closer and closer and closer to our core when we do that. So I'll get started. For those of you that just are joining us now, please share in the chat box who you are, where you are from, and what you are hoping to get out of this exercise. So hopefully you all got the workbook that I sent out earlier. I am also going to drop it in the chat box just in case you were not able to access that. So I will get that into the chat box here just a second. See. Okay, I'm just dropping this into the chat box. It will take just a moment to upload. But if you aren't sure if you have it or not, I did send it in an email to everyone who is registered a little bit ago, and it is in the chat box. So those of you that haven't updated Zoom should be able to access that attachment, and I will be working off that. But in the meantime, go ahead and drop in the chat box who you are, where you are from, and what you are hoping to get out of today's workshop. Core values are my favorite. So for me, everything comes back to core values. When I work with clients on a one-on-one basis, be it life, be it business, I always think it's really important to return to this exercise. I told you all in the beginning last week that this is about getting back to basics, this series, and it's about really, it's like that Gap commercial, like I mentioned, of like getting back to the basics, the jeans and the t-shirt, your basic life and business wardrobes. And no basics would be complete without our core values. So core values are the compass that point us home to our own true north. There was a really interesting client experience that I had this past year where I was doing the core values exercise with one of my clients, and she was like, isn't everyone's core value compassion? Or it was like compassion or love or understanding. It was some very altruistic value. And I said, well, not necessarily, but if it's important to you, it's important to you. But core values, it can be a great reminder that we see life as we are, not as others see it, right? We're viewing it through our lens, and we probably have a lens of core values, even if we haven't identified them yet. So when I think about core values, I always think about, the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with Stephen Covey, right? There's this video that you can find on YouTube if you Googled Stephen Covey rocks video, and he's leading this conference, and it's clearly late 80s, early 90s. It's like the women in the shoulder padded suits and the really harsh colors, and the videotaping from the late 80s, early 90s, and that it's got its own feel to it. And he calls this woman up to the stage, and he says, okay, here's a bucket, and this bucket represents your life. And you've got piles of pebbles, and you've got piles of sand, and you've got piles of rocks. It's all got to go into that bucket. And so she throws in the sand, she throws in the pebbles, and there's no room for the big rocks that are left over. And he says, those big rocks are actually the most important things in your life. You know, their family, for some people, that's a core value. For some people, work is a core value. They're your work, you know, these are the most important things. And then he had another bucket, and he's like, let's start by placing the big rocks in first, right? So they put those big rocks in the bucket, and then they pour in the sand, and then they pour in the pebbles, and then there's room for everything. So it's kind of like a game of Tetris. When we put our core values first, they get done, they happen, they're prioritized. But when those core values aren't put in first, there's no room for them. We might not think that there's enough room. So this exercise that we're going to be going through in a little bit is a way for us to really figure out what it is that is most important to us, the values that have to go in first, above all things. We'll probably have enough time today to do this exercise for ourselves, for our personal lives. If you're a business owner, I would highly recommend you create core values for work. And they're potentially different than they are for your personal life. They're probably not going to necessarily be the same. There's probably going to be some overlap, but it's not the same. My business core values and my personal core values are not the same. There is major overlap because I've built a life and a business that I want to go like this. So there's major overlap between the two, but they're just not the same. So core values. Let me tell you a little bit of stories. So yesterday I was telling you all how I hated my life because I was getting to this point when I was working in corporate America. I spent 10 years in sales for a Fortune 500 insurance company. And I worked specifically with financial advisors to help them sell life insurance. So it was often my responsibility and literally my job, the thing that I would get paid for, to answer calls from financial advisors and their assistants, and then walk their assistants through how to fill out a life insurance application. And if you want to talk about paperwork nightmare, this is it. So it definitely requires compassion to walk somebody through this paperwork if it's not something that they're accustomed to. I did this job for 10 years, and I figured that they could train a cat to do it by the time I was done with it. I mean, it just felt like it was just not something that they needed a skilled, intelligent human being to do, is how it felt after 10 years of doing it. Not to mention, it was never my calling to begin with. It was one of those things, it was a great job, great pay for someone else, but not me. Like, that was not my purpose. That was not my calling. And so I hit this point where I was mean and I was nasty on the phone, and I would hang up those phone calls, and like the self-loathing that started to happen during that time in my life, like there was not a lot of compassion for myself. I was turning into that evil customer service representative that everybody gives a bad rap on the other end of the line. And I knew that I just hit this point where I was like, no more, I can't do this anymore. So what I did, like when I'd had enough, when I realized that I did not like the person staring back at me in the mirror, I actually scheduled some time away at a beach, at Carolina Beach in North Carolina. There was a little bed and breakfast, and I went over a long weekend in January. After a national sales conference, I was exhausted. I flew back in from Florida on a Friday and drove from Raleigh to Carolina Beach, which is about 2.5 hours away. And I had all sorts of books, self-help books with me, but my goal was to figure out what my core values actually were, because I was so lost. I didn't know which direction I was going in my life or which direction I should be going in my life. And I sat down the first morning that I was there, and I took a blanket to the beach on this cold January morning and a cup of coffee. And I bundled up and I sat down and I just stared at the ocean and meditated until I felt the calm come over me, until I understood that I was in a place where I could make some decisions for myself. And I sat down and I did basically the exercise that we're about to go through together. And I identified the values that were most important to me. So for me, it was growth. Growth is very important to me. And I mean personal growth and development. My health was really important to me. It's still very important to me. Creativity, sovereignty, freedom. I didn't feel like I had any freedom in my days. I literally sat in a cubicle from about 7 o'clock in the morning until about 5:30 in the evening, and on the 12th floor of a building, and the cubicle, literally gray cubicle, so horrible. And so no freedom, right? No freedom. So sovereignty was really important to me. I wanted to be able to have flexibility over my day. I wanted to be able to go outside in the middle of the day. Or if it was a beautiful day, I wanted to be able to chuck the work for that afternoon and go play and then come back and do the work later. And I didn't have that kind of flexibility. Mindfulness became really important to me. And I think I would define mindfulness a little bit different than maybe what you're thinking, but that mindfulness as in taking a beat before I spoke, not snapping at people, paying attention to what was going on in my life, being very, very deliberate and intentional about things. And having a mindfulness, like actual sit down on a cushion practice, is great too, but that's not what I was thinking when I was thinking about mindfulness. So it was, growth, health, mindfulness, creativity, and sovereignty. Those were the things that were really, really important to me at those times. So I decided those were my core values, and those were the things that I was out of alignment with all of them. So I will tell you that. So I was working myself to the bone. So my health was suffering. It wasn't so much that I wasn't exercising, is that I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was overworked. I was kind of just burning the candle at both ends. At the time, I owned a yoga studio and ran and worked full time. And so I was just at my wit's end. I was sick all the time. I was getting colds. I was getting the flu. It was not good. Complete misalignment with my health. I was in a relationship that had to end. We didn't have any overlap in our core values. And so I knew the job had to go. I knew the relationship had to go. And I knew that I had to take a really big leap of faith. As I'm telling you all this story, I think it's really important to know that if you do this exercise and you find that you are very out of alignment with your core values, you do not have to take big, huge, drastic leaps. You can take baby steps in that direction. For me, I was just way past done. Like I was an egg that had been boiled way too long, and I was about to change colors. So I didn't take the baby step route in that direction. I took the drastic route in that direction. And I wish that I could have done it a little bit differently than I did, but I didn't. So here we are. And where I am now is a result of coming into alignment with those core values. And sometimes I get off and out of alignment with those. But when I am feeling off, the thing that I go back to is I get really brutally honest with myself of whether or not I am in alignment with those values. And if I'm feeling out of alignment, chances are I'm not taking care of my health. I've maybe taken my sovereignty for granted a little bit too much. And, I create my own schedule. So maybe I've put myself into a prison with my own schedule. So I have to look at those things and be really honest with myself as I go through that. So we're going to go through our core values. And I am going to tell you that we are going to pick 5 or less. So some folks like to have a lot. 5 is a completely arbitrary number. But the more core values you are, the harder it is to stay in alignment with those core values. So less is more in this exercise, but 3 to 5 is probably going to be your sweet spot. And chances are they're probably not going to change a lot. Although when I was preparing for this today, I realized that mindfulness is not necessarily a core value. I think that the core value there is probably purpose. Like I'm very purpose driven. And so my core values have been set now for about 6 years. And this is the first time that I've changed one of them. So I'll just kind of give you that context. I do think they change when we are, if you are a new mom and you are juggling work and being a parent and maybe being a wife, your values are probably going to be very different from someone like me. Or, if you've just had an empty nest, chances are you're going to want to reassess those core values. These are something that we're going to want to revisit on a regular basis to see if they have changed. Different life events, the death of a partner or a spouse could change these. There's so many different reasons why our core values may or may not change, that it's just prudent to go take a look at them once a year. Okay, so any questions before we jump into that? Questions, comments, thoughts? Anybody have experience with core values that they want to share?
Can I say one thing, Alicia?
Yes.
I love this. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Danielle Laporte, but for the last couple of years, I did her daily planner, which has select certain core values, and you kind of try to make your feelings and the ideas that you want your feelings to go along with those core values. She's actually stopped it. So this year I'm on my own. So I'm so glad I found this and you're doing this. So this is great. I love this. Thank you.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I will say it was Danielle Laporte's work that sparked all of this. And I used her planners for years, and I know she is no longer doing planners, which is so sad. I can highly recommend, there's a woman, Bonnie Christine, if you're looking for a good planner. She's oddly enough a surface pattern designer. So if you're someone in the creative sphere that wants fun creative stuff, her work is incredible. But her planner, the Flourish planner, is phenomenal. There's some things I miss from it that are not at all like Danielle Laporte's, but she does a good job. I will also let you know, this is a good time to let you know, I put out it's not a daily planner, although you can print a daily planner page and put it all in a workbook. I do a year in review and year ahead workbook that will be coming out probably next week. I've got to figure out how to do that along with my book launching, pre-sale launching. But this is a great thing where you can go back and you can take a look at everything you've accomplished over the last 12 months, assess that, and then look at the dreams and the desires and the goals. Although I want to be careful, and especially if we've got a Danielle Laporte folk in here, to make sure that I'm talking about that in an interesting way. The goal, we don't want to set arbitrary goals, is just all I'm going to say about that. But like goals that are, Danielle Laporte would call it goals with soul. So this is a great way to take a look at where you've been and where you want to go. And the O-ring is like giving a little feedback there. But so just know that that's coming, and that's something that you can work with as well. Okay. Any other thoughts about core values before we dive into this? Oh, if you want to use crystals during the meditation today, would I recommend any? I think that with crystals, whatever you are most drawn to is the thing that is going to be the most powerful for you. what they say, what crystals do, who knows? We know what they've traditionally been said to be helpful with, but if we're drawn to them, we're drawn to them, and that means that there's something there for us. So take a look at the crystals that you are most drawn to and grab hold of them. I don't know if y'all do this, but when I go for walks, I'll often look down and just see if there's any rocks that catch my eye, and I grab them and I put them in my pocket and I treat them just like crystals. It's a little bit cheaper way to do crystals. Geology, hey, right? Okay, so I do want us to start with a little meditation. So the most important thing for us in this next part of the process is I need you to be comfortable. So if you're more comfortable turning off your screen for the meditation, that's fine. If you want to lay down for the meditation, that's fine too. I'm going to put a little bit of Reiki into it as well. But I just want us to kind of clear our minds with this meditation. So do whatever you need to do to get as comfortable and cozy as possible. Close your eyes. Take a big, deep breath in through your nose. Let it out through your mouth. Another big, deep breath in through your nose. Let it out through your mouth. Scan your body for anywhere that you are holding, clenching, or tightening, and then let go. Breathing in through your nose, out through your nose. Calling on our loved ones, our ancestors, our friends, our guides, our angels, our archangels. To help us see what we need to see, hear what we need to hear, experience what we need to experience, to serve our highest and greatest good, and the highest and greatest good of all beings everywhere. Relax the bottoms of your feet. Relax the tops of your feet. Relax your heels and your toes. Let go of tension in your ankles, in your shins. Let go of tension in your calves. Relax your knees, the backs of your knees, fronts of your knees, sides of your knees. Let go of tension in your thighs, your inner thighs, your IT bands, your quads, and your hamstrings. Relax your hips, pelvis, your belly, your low back. Let go of tension in your hands, the back of your hands, your palms, your fingers, your wrist. Relax your forearms and your elbows, your upper arms and your shoulders. Relax your chest. Back of your chest, the front of your chest, your solar plexus, your heart center, the intercostal muscles between your ribs. Relax your collarbones and your neck. Let go of tension in your jaw, your cheeks, your eyelids, your forehead, and the top of your head. If any thoughts come to mind, just let them go. Whatever it is, you could think about it later. And I want you to imagine that you are walking a moss-covered path through a forest. And it feels safe and inviting. And as you walk, you come to a clearing, a beautiful field. Meadow. And there is one bird far away in the sky. And that bird sees you, and you know it's a good omen. And it flies over to you and lands right in front of you. And this bird transforms before your very eyes into your highest self. You've dropped your ego. You've dropped your day-to-day worries and your cares. And this magical being standing right in front of you is your highest and best self. And she's whispering to you. She's whispering what is most important to you. She has something to say. You can put your hands on your heart if that helps you connect with that highest self better, your highest self. And just listen and notice what it is she's telling you. What is most important to you? And when she is done delivering her message, you ask her if there's anything else that she wants you to know. And when you know her message is complete, you give her a hug, where you take her hand, where you share an offering or a blessing, is a thank you for her coming to you and sharing herself with you. And if she didn't have anything to say, that's okay too. Thank her for her presence and bid her farewell. She turns back into a bird and flies away. And even as she flies away, you are confident that you have access to her, your highest self, whenever and wherever you need her. Armed with this knowing, you turn around and you walk out of the meadow, out of the clearing, back into the forest, down the moss-covered path, step by step by step. When you're ready, taking a big, deep breath in, letting it out through your mouth, bringing your hands together at heart center, honoring yourself for listening, letting your inner knowing guide you, bowing to yourself. And when you're ready, opening your eyes, grabbing your journal, and writing down anything that came to you during that exercise. What did the bird look like? What kind of bird was it? What message did she have for you? How did you feel? Let's take a few minutes to write it out. And if you had any ahas during that time and you want to share them with us, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat box. Sometimes that can be a very powerful meditation. And when you're done, just drop it in the chat box or give me a thumbs up. Okay, so now we'll move on to the next part of the exercise, and this is in the workbook that I sent you. So you can share, you can write in your journal or in this. So initial thoughts can go here about the meditation. And then here, I would love for you to write down, make a list of the things that are energy giving in your life and the things that are energy taking or draining. You can drop that in the chat box or give me a thumbs up when you're done with that exercise as well. And y'all don't have to be on mute. You know, I'm pretty interactive. So you can be, but you don't have to be. And then we'll go ahead and we'll move on to the next exercise. If you're still working on what is energy giving or energy draining, that's absolutely fine. This next piece of the puzzle is not terribly difficult. So there's a word bank for you on the next page. And what I want you to do is I want you to we're going to start really focusing on our specific core values, keeping in mind what our inner self told us, the things in our lives that are energy draining or energy giving. And I want us to really think about that in the forefront of our mind as we're thinking about what words could really help us encompass what our values are. So what we'll do is we'll circle the ones that resonate with us. And it doesn't matter in this step how many you circle the ones that resonate with you and put an X through the ones that don't resonate with you. And then we'll narrow from there. Can something be on both lists of energy giving and energy draining? Oh, Amy, you just opened up a can of worms. But yes, the answer to that is yes. I'm going to answer that why people are circling. Yes, it can be both. And sometimes our values can both be energy giving and energy draining. So just I want to give that caution as we're working on it. That's why I didn't call them negatives and positives, right? They're great question. Oh, and sweet Deanna said that raw is energy giving. So those of you that are not in raw yet, just a plug that you should join us. Christina, yes, sometimes they can be opposites, but everyone's going to have a different experience with things that are energy giving and energy draining. When I would, for example, when I was trying to get my health back in order and I was still running at like 5 o'clock in the morning, it was both energy giving and energy draining to get up at 4:30 in the morning to run. But it was both, and it was important, and it was a part of my core value, and is when I could get it done. So different things are going to be different for different folks, but they might be polar opposites. That's going to lead to a lot of wonderful clarity if they are polar opposites. I mean, there's probably a lot of insights that you can glean from that. When you are done with the circling of your values, if you have index cards, I mentioned last week that this is a great one to have index cards for if you have them. What I would like you to do is take all of the ones that you circled as resonating with you and place them on index cards. Or you can tear off sheets of paper. Or you can kind of write them down, because the reason why I think index cards are kind of the way to go in this, or tearing off sheets of paper, is because then once you have them all of the ones that you circled out, I want you to see if they fall into groups. So write them out and then look through those cards and see if you can put them into piles or into groups. How's everyone doing with this exercise? Still working, still trucking. Is anyone getting tripped up? I know we have at least one wordsmith here. And Christina, I'm looking at you. So I know this could be a little bit difficult because you love words so much.
So I'm in a bookstore coffee shop, so it might be a little loud behind me, but yeah, it's really tough because so many of the words are similar or, you know, for the grouping. And the other penchant that we might have is to what we want to have as our core values, as opposed to what they really are. You know, so it's like, oh yeah, I want to be more passionate, or oh, I want to be more communicative, or whatever it might be, right? So I find myself going there as well. So yeah, and you know me, I can't narrow it down too terribly far, but I'm doing good.
Good. I like to thank you for adding that, because you helped me think of something else that I really wanted to share. I think of my core values as my when I'm in alignment with them, I am authentically me. So if there's something that you're like, oh, I want that to be a value, a core value, is that going to help? Like a litmus test there is the question that you can ask yourself is that thing that I want to be a value? Like if I'm doing that, is that the thing that's going to help bring me into my authenticity? Like the thing that's me or not? health is a funny one for me. It is a strong, strong value. Like taking care of this temple that I live in is a strong value of mine. And it is in part a value because it helps me remember to make it a priority. So it is the core of my being, but it is not the easiest one for me to stay in alignment with. It's very easy for me to ignore health. And I don't just mean food and drink and exercise. When I have a way more holistic approach to health, but like, am I spending hours upon hours on Instagram telling myself that it is for work? Am I spending, like, there are different types of health, but am I in alignment with the things that are going to help me stay healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy? So those of you that might have moved on to the grouping piece of this exercise now, and just know that you can keep working on this all weekend, right? So you have the worksheet. It's really going to take you through it. But once you've got those groups kind of narrowed down, you've got some words that are similar. And when I write out my core values, I create my own definition of what that value is. I write it out. And there is a section for you it's step 4, and it has you write down what the value is and then define it for yourself. And it doesn't have to be the definition that is in Webster's definition. And you can take some of those similar words and you can include them in the definition. If they are, they're your values, you get to define them however you want to define them. This is not a true, false, yes, no answer. This is a yes and answer. So figure out how to encompass what you need to be in those values in the definition. So that's on step 4 of the worksheet. Yeah, Dawn just asked me, you said, bring yourself into integrity. Integrity is not one of my core values. So I believe in living with integrity. It's like, I don't know, I don't need to be reminded of that with a value, if that makes sense. It just already is. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but it's not, it's not one of my core values. And just like I said in the beginning, like, we see the world as we are. When I have had coaching clients, often they'll ask me questions like, well, isn't kindness everyone's core value? No, maybe it's not. And kindness looks like different things to different people. So things like integrity and kindness, that those might not, they seem like they might be everyone's core value, but they're not necessarily everyone's core value. They might be your core values, but it's the things that make up you. And for me, living with integrity means living my values. Yes, Christina.
I found a way to make it more helpful for me to like an analogy, if you will. So it's like when you're looking for a place to live, a house or an apartment or whatever, what does that place absolutely have to have for you to be able to live there? Because that's what you just said, is that you're living your core values. So the things like gratitude or integrity or kindness or whatever, those might already be, in the air there, or they're just a part of your life, so that you don't go looking for those. The core values I think of as amenities, I guess, of that place where you expect to live.
Yeah.
where you can live. So
Christina, that's a beautiful metaphor to think about it. Like, are we someone that would live at the beach or the mountains? Do we want to live in the city or do we want to live in the country? Do we want to live in the suburbs? Do we want to live in Greensboro, North Carolina, or do you want to live in New York City, right? So that's exactly what a great way to think about those values, as well as like, is your house going to have a fireplace or a sunroom, or is it going to be a tiny house? What are your values, right? I'm sure you all will be working on this long after our hour is through, but I want to kind of talk us through next steps with these. So in step 5, what I want you to do is, once you have these nailed down, or what you think is kind of nailed down, I want you to take sticky notes, put them on your computer, put those values in your, like on your bathroom mirror, put them on, especially in your calendar, wherever you set appointments. How you spend your time is how you spend your life. So when you put something on your calendar, is it in alignment with your core values? If it's not, it probably shouldn't be on your calendar. And like I said, we don't need to make drastic steps all at once, but what are you going to do to get your values on your calendar? And if it's not on your values list, off your calendar, because how we spend our time is absolutely how we spend our life. So over the next week, be looking at your calendar, looking at your core values before you put something into your calendar. When you have them on your bathroom mirror, be looking at those. Do those all sit right with you? Do they all resonate with you? If not, go back to the drawing board with one. And it might be just one value that doesn't feel off. Maybe it's a couple that don't feel on. But keep them in the forefront. They are my guideposts for everything that I do. I'm considering if I want to go back to graduate school. And so I'm thinking about, is that going to keep me in alignment with my core values? That will help me answer that question. Do we leap into the relationship? Do we end the relationship? Do we, there's so many different things that we can take through kind of this lens of core values. And if it's in alignment with our values, then we're on track. And if it's not, then we need to consider what steps we need to take to fix that. So the more in alignment with your values you are, the more authentically you are living and operating in the world. So take a look at them, revisit them, place them in the places that you need them to be so that they will stay at the forefront of your mind. And then think about the big things happening in your life. And are they in alignment for you? Be gentle with yourself if you find that there's a lot of things in your life that aren't in alignment with your values. Just start thinking about baby steps to get there. We can, of course, do coaching if you need that bird's eye view, someone to talk through it with you. And I'd be happy to do a 30-minute discovery call with all of you, any of you that are interested, to look at where you are and where you want to be, and see, if coaching could be a good next step for you. So I will put my calendar link in the chat box. It'll take me just a second, so that you can get a free discovery. It's a 30-minute discovery call. What I've found is that even in that discovery call, a lot of people have ahas. So we kind of get deep fast, and that even that was not, let me delete. That was not what I meant to. I cannot delete that. Sorry, that's everybody who's registered for today. I did not mean to put everybody's email address in there. My computer did not do what it was supposed to, so bear with me. Okay, scheduling link at the bottom. So forgive all of those email addresses in there. And so I'll tell you, I would love to know, did anybody have a core value that popped out at them today? Can you share, take yourself off mute and share, or drop it into the chat box?
Yeah, I can. I haven't fleshed it out completely, but it also came from the meditation and the bird of higher self that came and what she had to say, which was, you are living poetry. So I am looking at that in terms of the expressiveness or communication or my word nerdiness, or however, I'm not exactly sure. So I'm still fleshing that out, but I think that's going to be some, it hit me to my core, I can tell you that. So.
I love that. Well, and Gail dropped in the chat box, she said that nothing new but confirmation or affirmation of what she's already been sensing. And I love that. I had a reading yesterday, and it was one of those that confirmed some things that I've been sensing. And it was such a gift to me to get confirmation or affirmation. So I hope that that's how it's felt for you today, Gail. And Jennifer Tam said curiosity. Anybody else want to share a value that they connected with?
For you.
Yeah.
Because I've done this exercise with you before. And this time I kind of got stuck on maybe the difference between what might be a core value versus what might be like a love language or a personality trait type of thing. So example would be recognition. And I think I'm struggling with that word as a value because it seems, I don't know, it doesn't sit right in that category, but it's definitely something that's of importance to me. Like when I think about, it's definitely one of my love languages.
I wonder how that informs your values. Would be the thing that I would get curious about, right? Like, if recognition is important to you, but it doesn't feel like it is a value, how do you need that to show up in your life? Do you need to recognize yourself? Do you need to be recognized by others? And what does that look like, since we can't control how others respond to us? It's a great thing to get curious about. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Okay, so thank you so much for being a part of this series, for being here today. This is 4 of 5 sessions. So as you can see, today's and last Friday's are more of the touchy-feely stuff, the stuff that I love the most. But the first session, yesterday's session, and next week's session are more of your PowerPoint tactical. So our last session will be next week. It is how to pitch to podcasters, how to tell interesting stories when you get on a podcast, and how to be a good podcast guest. So I have a lot of information for all of you. It will be a PowerPoint like yesterday. It will be packed with powerful punches of information, and I hope it will be useful to all of you. If you have anybody that you think needs to join us, they can still register for that, just the same way you did. But thank you so much for being here. And if you've been enjoying this at all, if you've got any reflections you want to share with me, don't hesitate to email me. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.